Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me properly. Okay, awesome. Yes, so I'm James Summer. I use he, him, and they, them pronouns. My first piece that I'm going to share with you today, I think is something that in a way we can all relate to a little bit. This piece kind of talks about loneliness. And of course, that's something that we've all dealt, whether we've been on our alone at home or we have been with family. It's kind of been this journey, I think, for a lot of people for self-discovery because we've kind of been isolated with ourselves. I've noticed this, especially I am working down at the high school at Victoria High School. And so, there are so many youth right now who are figuring out who they are. And high school is already that time where we kind of learn about ourselves and, okay, go, where do I fit in this space? But, being at home, it's been something completely different. And I think we've all had a chance to grow and learn, but also be lonely. And lonely is not always a bad thing. It can be good. It can, kind of take us out of our comfort zone and leave us some room for growth. So thank you. This one is called Empty Promise. The empty promise, the I'll see you again and the let's hang out soon. The sentences I'm fully aware will never happen, but I let them stain me. The empty promise keeps me awake. The empty bed when I want to crawl into my mom's and lie next to her lying, I say, I saw someone today. She asks, promise? It's the loneliness of knowing everyone you meet will one day just be a memory, a cup of coffee that was so good, but I'll most likely never make it like that again. We only talk about talking over coffee, but no matter how many times I text you, you can never seem to make it. There is no concrete evidence that soulmates exist. Adam could not handle the solitude, so God created Eve. Here at last is my bone, flesh of my flesh, and yet in every timeline the serpent makes an appearance. My mind feels like buying a new house every day, although the real estate agent never has anything to say except don't buy it. Attachment theory's components include the ability for humans to grow bonds with their offspring, awakening loneliness, awake. After I've taken 3 melatonin tablets so I could sleep and not feel, I work so I don't have to listen, and I write poetry so I don't have to watch the time pass by me. Existence of a system where only memories can hold the past, not even your best friend can pinky promise the future. And it's that empty promise, the compliment that I can't point out its legitimacy, the person whose body I finally thought was meant to fit into mine, like wine and bread, meaningless shapes become nothing. If Adam gets a companion, why don't I? Or am I not Adam? Maybe in this story, I'm the snake, representative of the fallen angel. It's the monarch that flies from west alone, although he's physically clumped up with the others like parasites clinging to one another. He, like me, can't see through all the useless bodies, the faceless people, and I lie down at night staring at God, wondering why everyone else seems to have it together. This caterpillar has no clue on how to go about making a chrysalis, so instead he wanders around an empty milkweed plant in search of anything. I seek social connections like a detection dog at the airport. My mattress becomes soil, so I begin to decompose. Once it is written, soundness of the heart is the life of the flesh, but envy the rottenness of the bones. It is that empty promise that I think about. A different friend group every month and then realize you never belong to anyone, living on the border of nothing and no one, getting no results at the bottom of a Google page and the search bar reads, is there anywhere for me to go? It's a million useless answers and far too many empty promises. Thank you. My next piece that I have is a little bit lighter. I like to kind of do, especially with poetry. It's been so hard because you kind of, in person, I would be really like reading off of your faces and how your reactions are and the snapping. So moving from real life to Zoom has been like totally different. Like I really have to like kind of rework what I'm doing. So I try to keep like a mix of both. It's yeah, it's just such a different atmosphere. But you know what? I'm so grateful. It feels kind of like Zoom came out of nowhere. Like before all this, I've never heard of Zoom before. So it's kind of like a blessing because it means that we are able to share our art and continue on being connected to other artists and poets in the area and out of the area as well. It's great. I'm really grateful for that. So yes, this one is about my best friend. And because it's Pride Month, she is bi and she is just the love of my life. She is my soulmate. I love her to bits. So this one goes out to her. A poem for Nadia Maria Nicolici, or a poem for a real life fairy. A fairy circle, known as when mushrooms grow in a ring up to 10 or more fungi. This is where I believe this lady comes from. In a fairy circle, this is where she dances under pure moons, naked and unafraid, swayed to the music made by ladybugs and dragonflies, antagonize the humans in the distance who have lack of grace. In a fairy circle, every toadstool telling a tale of an underrated, unrespected girl. In a fairy circle, one person, one woman, one unconditional love, one bottle of fairy dust littering her face. The case is her face is unexplainably magical. In a fairy circle, one mouth, one third eye, one set of wings, one body, her hobby, making boys, girls, and everyone in between fall in love. And I might be gay, but goddamn, this girl has Tinkerbell running for her money. In a fairy circle, one conversation, one stab, one fight, one makeup, one someone who will always forgive. Giving for her is second nature. While many take the fruit I have to offer, she brings more. Drawer of generosity, curiosity of how I used to look over her head and into others' eyes when she had stood in front of me with a permanent open heart. In a fairy circle, one song, one smile, one personality that cannot be matched. She's a bit of Nelly Furtado and Avril Lavigne, but her DNA is mostly pixie. In a fairy circle, many insecurities. One no she dislikes, one stomach she despises, one F on her paper, her goal, one meal a day. As a child, I never imagined fairies to be so disappointed with themselves, but the number one in the Bible means you're starting new. For pagans, it's the connection of universal life, and altogether the mushrooms make up an infinite story about morning glory suns and evening primrose bottles of vodka. Walk over bridges and step over lily pads to find her, the girl who has endured the most while giving her all, my best friend. Thank you so much. I will do one last one. Going back to some serious stuff. Last year was, I think it's interesting because last year we had a lot of protests for a lot of different things, and how that has switched over. We have gone, you know, if you remember last summer, I think like we had so many protests for climate change, and it's interesting how, you know, with everything that's gone on, that has kind of been pushed to the side. And so last year I did a performance down at the Climate Anxiety Haunted House, which I think is like the coolest idea because yeah, that's something that scares me like so much. Like that is something that keeps me up at night. So so I was invited to speak there, and I've heard a lot of poems about climate change and what's happening with the environment, and the poems that have really stuck with me are poems that bring in people's personal experiences because, you know, we can talk about climate change all day. Like, yeah, we can go on and on about what's happening in the world, but to hear someone say, this is how it has affected me the most, it's something that is kind of eye-opening because you realize how much it really has affected real people's lives. So this is my dedication to those poems, and how growing up, this wasn't a conversation. And so to have this conversation now is definitely scary. Thank you. This one is called Estophobia. When I was 6, I was scared of the summer, which is funny because summer just so happens to be my middle name, but I was really scared of the summer, and I would sit by the air conditioning waiting for the next season. The fear of summer heat is called estophobia. Whenever it came, I got this feeling of suffocation in my lungs, an unconsenting hug like plastic wrap around my frame. It placed a bag over my head and told me to breathe. And it was almost like my present self was trying to warn the younger one through the timelines. And it was almost like my present self was trying to let my younger self know this fear meant something. And it was almost like my present self was trying to kill off my younger self so estophobia wouldn't do it for me. James Summer Rodriguez. It's just a little too perfect that I was named after the one thing that would haunt me, a ghost that lives outside my house, a ghost that when I communicate replies, "You only have 11 years. And soon I'll have one. And if I could tell my younger self to ask for the paper cup instead of the plastic, I would, but I can't. And maybe I'm a little privileged in the way that my little sister is a gateway to my younger self when I tell her, why don't we use the water fountain instead? I'm really telling her, practice saving your life one small step at a time. Try to put summer in its place. Show your finger to the sun and swear at the air particles and look winter directly in the eyes and say, I'm trying. Don't you wish this whole thing was just a horror movie, the psycho killer about to get you, but then the credits roll? Warm weather wraps around my throat like an umbilical cord. It feeds me, but the closer it gets, the more dangerous it becomes. I'm sitting in the womb, a resting place before the real world, and when I release myself from the sitting spot, my mother looks into me and names me after my killer. I call this estophobia. Thank you so much. Okay, that's enough for me.